Hello and welcome to Itentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to share our tools to make NextGen more efficient with you today. My name is Chelsea Grover and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a copy along with the slides of the recording within the next week. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare, and our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen. Next, I wanted to mention an upcoming webinar that we'll be presenting on October 24th. We'll be presenting Ever Wondered Why Your NextGen reports don't match? Do you find yourself running report after report in NextGen where totals never seem to match? We've all felt a sense of frustration when it comes to balancing the reports in NextGen, so we took the time to investigate these discrepancies. We will review which reports should match and also examine unique instances where the reports may not. We want to provide you with the helpful hints we've discovered on why reports may not be balanced and steps to take to avoid the irritation as well. I'll send out an invitation for that tomorrow, so keep your eyes open. Okay, so back to today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you may type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them, and again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Itentive's Business Development Manager, and Joel Schultz is Director of Product Solutions at Itentive, which means that him and his team are the people that actually built these great programs and thus is in a great position to demonstrate it. So Tom, I'm going to pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Chelsea. As Chelsea mentioned, we're talking today about the various products that Itentive has developed over the years as add-on products to NextGen that allows you to gain more efficiencies using NextGen. Here's the 5 products that we're going to cover today in our webinar. We're going to cover ChartGuard OnDemand, ChartGuard, our RefundManager product, our UnnapliedTool, and our Billing Manager product. And throughout the webinar today, you'll gain an understanding of how the product works at the high level, and then also how you can gain increased efficiencies using the products within your practice. At the end, I'll give you a brief overview of who Itentive is as well, so you can gain an understanding of who we are. The format for the presentation or for the webinar today is going to be, I'm going to give you the high-level overview about the product, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joel Schultz, and he's going to give you the demonstration of the product, going into more detail about the product and how it works. So to start with, our first product we'll go through this afternoon is ChartGuard, our ChartGuard product for downtime preparedness. It's a simple solution that's easy to use, and it's very cost effective. It really is just simply a business continuity solution that ensures the availability of your patient charts during AHR downtime. And with ChartGuard, what you get is you get the appointment listing for each of your locations, and then you get the patient charts for the patients that are scheduled to come in to that particular office location. So in case you lose access to NextGen at that location, your providers and staff can go over to that PC that has the charts on it and the appointment listing on it and be able to continue to see your patients with minimal disruption. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe is going to take you through what ChartGuard operates and the output of it as well.
Terrific, thank you, Tom, and thank you everyone for joining us. ChartGuard is a great, what we call a high-tech, low-tech solution. It's high-tech because the back-end engine, as Tom showed in that slide, pulls the charts out of your database and creates a PDF file that emulates the paper chart we had a few years ago. It's low-tech in that that chart we create is a PDF file that can be read on virtually any computing device. So when your system is down, when all that complexity has failed us, you can still read these files, you can print them out, you can use them electronically. So let's jump in and see what that looks like. For each location that receives the ChartGuard PDF files, they'll land on a specified computer in a specified folder that we have recommendations for how those get locked down and audited that we work with you on during the installation. But when there's an outage, someone would sign onto that machine and go ahead and pull up the folder. Now at the top level of the folder, we have the appointment listing, so you know who's coming in and when. And we can also pull in some additional information. We have a client who wanted the first 100 characters of the details field pulled from the appointments. So we can do things like that. This can be, somewhat customized to give you information that's meaningful to you. Plus, it helps you print out the charts as needed. Maybe you're only going to print them for the next half hour or hour in advance if you're using them on paper. And that way, when the system comes back up, you don't have to shred a whole lot of paper because you printed the whole day's worth and the system was only down for a couple hours. So again, this lets you know who's coming in for your planning within the practice. So each location would get one of these delivered to them each night with updates on it. And then the charts themselves land in a folder. And again, if you had 100 charts or 1,000 charts, or you had a big location with 20 providers, we can subdivide this folder by various attributes in NextGen, such as provider grouping, subgrouping, locations, things like that. Again, one of the things we work with you on the setup. If there are a bunch of charts out here, you could go ahead and use the search that's built into Windows to type in the name and be able to get the chart you're looking for. They're all named last name, first name, date of birth to make them easy to find and verify that you have the right chart. In the chart itself is everything you need for the clinical side of an encounter while the system's down. We have this patient demographic sheet that has obviously their address, insurance information, great things like that. After that, we get into the module information that we pull from NextGen. And if you're using this on paper, obviously you just flip through the different sections. But if your system is running enough, your network is working well enough within the four walls of the site, even though you can't get to NextGen where you can use the network, you can of course use these electronically. And if you use them electronically, we went ahead and put in bookmarks so that the provider could jump to the specific section that they were looking for. And this chart, like I said, contains everything you need. It's the module information you designate you want from NextGen. It's documents from the EHR that you tell us you want from NextGen, images and other documents scanned into ICS that can be pulled in here. And because it's a downtime, you don't have to pull in everything. You tell us how much of each type of thing that you want, and that's how much we put in the chart. So when there's an outage, you probably don't care about a visit from 10 years ago. You care about the last several visits. So again, it's part of the configuration. We work with you on it, and you have these great charts that really emulate the paper charts we used for years before EHR came along. And most of the providers will be familiar with them, and it's all the data they're used to looking to in NextGen. So ChartGuard is great insurance against an outage. Again, there's a point where spending money on technology kind of hits a steep curve, and ChartGuard helps you kind of plug that hole that's left once you've done all your smart redundancies, and there's still a chance of things happening like network outages and such. So this is ChartGuard, and I'll turn it over to Tom, and we'll cover kind of the next evolution of ChartGuard.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. So the next product we're going to talk about is our ChartGuard OnDemand product. And really this is enables you to generate a chart in the moment. As the ChartGuard, which we just reviewed, creates charts basically overnight. What this one does is allows you to create a chart for an individual patient or a group of patients basically in the moment. So if a patient came up to you and said, hey, I'd like to have my patient record generated for me, you could enter in their name into the user interface screen that we created for ChartGuard OnDemand, and then be able to generate that chart for the individual. And Joe is going to show you the demonstration of it as I turn it over to him. But really, it's good for just what I said. Patients coming in and asking for their history. It's good for being able to share histories between co-managing providers. It's good for audit requests when you have an audit request that comes in and you need to provide a group of patients for an auto request, you're able to do that as well with ChartGuard OnDemand. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to give you a look at ChartGuard OnDemand.
Thanks again, Tom. So as Tom mentioned, this is a great tool when you need to pull populations of charts or you need to pull them in a relatively short time frame. As clients started using ChartGuard, the obvious question came, which is, hey, can we give someone a full medical history in ChartGuard? So what we did is we took that ChartGuard engine, that high-tech engine that pulls everything out of the database, and we built a user interface that sits on top of it and allows you to pull those various populations, whether it's for a specific patient, whether it's by provider, by financial class, for audits, by dates, all these great ways that we've built in here to be able to pull those charts. And again, we keep expanding how those search fields operate. So in future evolutions of ChartGuard, we'll have new ways to pull those. So I'm going to do a search and pull up our test patient population here. And we'll see there's a number of these that we can pull charts for. Now, if we want to pull just a couple of them, we can click on those. If we want to pull all of them, we can right mouse and do a select all. And then we can submit them to be requested. Okay, and then these will run for several minutes, and they'll either be dropped in a folder where you can get to all of them, or you can go in and look at them one at a time. So I just did a request of these right before while Tom was talking there. And so now we'll go in our history and see what's happened. And we'll see a few of them are still pending. A number of them have been completed. So let's go ahead and right mouse and we'll view a completed one. And again, this is very similar to what you're seeing in ChartGuard. The biggest difference here is that in this case, you're normally going to pull the full history into the chart, right? If you're giving someone their medical record, you want to give them everything, not just what ChartGuard, the downtime edition does, where it just pulls it for what's needed for the visit. This is going to pull the complete history. And as we talked before, if you give it to them in the PDF file, we still have all those bookmarks in there, and it's all human readable. It's a little easier to work with than the CCDA. We have providers who leave a practice and import these into the document management system at the practice where they're going to. We have patients who take these on a secure drive and take them to their providers with them. So a lot of great uses for this tool, and this was created really to plug the gaps in the CCDA where you have a whole lot of technical information, but why not give someone something readable in a simple to use PDF format? Tom?
Okay, Joe, thank you very much. The next product we're talking about is our RefundManager product. So we just covered the two products that are on the EHR side of the practice. The next three products that we're going to cover are our the financial side of the practice, and that is RefundManager. And what RefundManager does is it streamlines and automates the credit balance handling and refund check processing within the practice or the organization. And it enables you to find credits on patient accounts and then make a decision on what to do with that credit, whether to issue a refund, whether to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it. We integrate with many popular accounting applications in order to eliminate data entry and provide you the ability to take a look at a guarantor's account across multiple practices if you have multiple practices set up in NextGen. There are three modules that make up RefundManager, and you'll see these modules in the demonstration. The first module is the Credit Scout module, and that's the one that's used by the billers to find the credit balances on patient accounts and take those actions on the credit balance, as I mentioned, whether to issue a refund or to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it, or to task it out for further work, further research into the work log manager of NextGen. The second module you're going to see is the Batch Detective module, and that's the module that enables you to bring the credits that you identified as refunds over to your accounting application and be able to generate the refund checks. And in that, as I mentioned, allows you to eliminate the data entry associated with entering all that information into your accounting application. The third module is the importer module that you'll see in the demonstration. And that's the module that brings the printed check information as far as check number, check date, check amount, and brings that over into into NextGen and updates the patient chart. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to take you through a quick demonstration of RefundManager.
So RefundManager is integrated with NextGen. It runs alongside your NextGen practice management. It launches from your NextGen practice management, and it uses the database your NextGen practice management is pointing at. I'm going to take you through this relatively quickly here, just in respect to your time, but RefundManager does a lot more. What I want to do is just give you a taste of how RefundManager operates and how it saves time, how it streamlines and automates the process. And then if you want to go into a deeper dive on any of these tools, reach out to us and we can schedule a one-on-one demo with your organization, and feel free to invite any of the subject matter experts or stakeholders in your organization that may want to attend that. So we're going to move fairly quickly here, but I'm going to show you these modules that Tom just talked about. We're going to start out with the Credit Scout, and that's our NextGen facing piece, where we're going to find credits that are sitting out there in NextGen and determine what action we're going to take on those credits, whether we want to refund them, whether we want to distribute them, move the money to other encounters, or we want to task them into the work log for future research later. So at the top level here, we start out with the different guarantors, and RefundManager can even handle cross-practice. If you're a CBO handling multiple practices in your database, it can give you a picture of how things look across those practices. For most of our demo here, we're going to stick with the case that most people have, where they're just working refunds and credits in a single practice. So at the top level is the guarantor. We go ahead, expand it down. We see the practice. We see who's getting the refund, whether that's a guarantor or an insurance, the encounter that makes up the refund, and then the charges under that encounter. If we want to go ahead and refund one of these, we can do some basic research using screens that mimic the financial summary and account summary in NextGen. And as I showed you, there's an encounter transaction view here too to help you make those decisions. But for the sake of time, let's say we want to go ahead and refund this one, and there's a credit here of $54.22, and there's a credit down here on this other encounter for $20, so it comes out to $74.22. If we decide we don't want to do one of these encounters, we can go ahead and uncheck it. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and push them all through. So if you wanted to issue refunds for a couple encounters in NextGen, obviously you're going to go into each one. You're going to create the transactions. You're going to have to put in all the right information, transaction codes, dollar amounts, and so on. Most of that work is going to be done for us in NextGen. So this is part of the automation that we're putting in place. It's really more of a streamlining of the process. You're making the decision on what to refund, because we just don't want to send out checks for anything with a credit in your database. And then once you decide what you want to do with it, in this case refund, we will pick that up and create all the transactions for you. All right, so here's a case down below where we have several encounters with credits that are going to be pushed through as refunds. And I'll show you how those get into the accounting system. We're using QuickBooks today, but as Tom mentioned, we have a number of the major accounting platforms that we support with RefundManager. In addition to refunds, as I mentioned earlier, RefundManager also supports the ability to move money between encounters and even between practices in some cases. So if we pick someone who has a distribution where money is in a credit on one encounter but is owed on the other encounter, we can go ahead and get a preview of this by doing a right mouse distribution preview. And we have ways to help you find, what are distributions versus refunds that we'd get into in the deeper dive. Essentially on this screen, everything to the left of the mouse is where money's coming from. Everything to the right is where it's going to. It's going to create those transactions on your behalf. So it's going to take 236 of the 295 credit and apply it over here to encounter 214, this sim, so on and so forth. Now, if we decide we don't like the order it's doing it, say we want to make sure this $67 gets paid off first, there's a manual way to do that matching as opposed to letting RefundManager do it oldest to newest. So we can go in and pick the credit, pick the debit, and match those up, kind of like we saw on that other screen. And now it's deducted that amount from the balance. This one's now 0, so we can take that remaining amount and apply it over here. So again, we can go oldest to newest, or let you go ahead and pick how you want the money to move. So in some cases, we just want to do the simple case. So there's only one here, so we'll let it go ahead and do it automatic without us matching it up. And then as we mentioned, the last option that you have is the ability to put it into the work log. If you're looking at one of these and gosh, you go into the account summary and it's just a mess, well, you may want to task that one out to handle later instead of interrupting, the flow you have going right now. So in picking what we want to do with these, we simply click check boxes, and then when we're ready to do the work, we right mouse, process items, and then we pick the appropriate attributes from NextGen. So for the one we tasked out, we'll go ahead and pick a task type. These are refund codes from NextGen. So again, there's not a lot of additional setup that has to happen for RefundManager. And then when we move the money, this is the distribution code that's going to be used for a movement within the same practice. You can pick a payment or adjustment code, whatever you'd normally use. And then if we were moving money in and out of the practice, there's codes to, write it off in one practice and accept the payment in the other practice. So then when we're ready to go, instead of you having to do the work to create all those transactions, we click Start and RefundManager does all the work for us. And again, it gives us a preview of these movements for the distributions. So it just created those refund transactions, it created those distributions for us, it put something out there in the work log, all with a series of mouse clicks, without you having to do a ton of data entry to make that happen. So back in NextGen now, we have our batch, and we can go ahead and balance it out and post it. We still let you post it with the NextGen because we want that validation that someone's reviewed it and signed off on it, which I'm sure you do too, especially with checks going out of the practice. So we'll go ahead and balance that out. And then we'll jump into one of the encounters that has a refund and show you some of the things that happen for you automatically. So let's go into encounter 1208. And we'll see our transaction here that just got created for us using the transaction code that we wanted. Over here on the right, it's showing the batch that it was put into. When we're done with this process, you'll have the check number, check date, check amount pulled in there without you having to enter that. Also, it created a note for you, letting you know that RefundManager created that and who it was for. So now, either immediately or at a future point in time, you'd go back into RefundManager and use the batch detective and send this out to the accounting system. Okay, so we'd pull up our batches that have refunds in them, click, and then export them out. As I mentioned, in this case, we're going to use QuickBooks, and this is just a screen that's allowing us to consolidate refunds going to the same person instead of sending, 3 or 5 separate checks. You can put them all into one check. Some accounting systems do that on their own. So right now, instead of the accounting side getting a report and having to do the data entry, RefundManager just push those checks and the demographics into QuickBooks for you. And again, this could be any accounting system. So now we have these in there with the detail. We don't have check numbers in here yet. Accounting loves this because they get out of the data entry business, right? They stick with the financial business. They get the information in here. You're able to review it. And then when you're ready, print the batch of checks. So it saves tons of time for everyone, both on the NextGen side and on the accounting side. So now to close out the RefundManager portion of our tour here, We have our check numbers here in the accounting system, and I promised you we'd get those back into NextGen. So again, either right away or at a future date, we can go in and find the exports that we've done and tell it to go ahead and import. And it'll take those 2 checks and break them out into the 5 refunds that they came from. Because remember, we consolidated some. So now if we go into NextGen, back into practice management, and I'm gonna kind of pop back and forth here just to refresh the screen. We got an extra encounter note capturing who it was to and what address the check was sent to on the accounting side. So you have that documentation for you in NextGen too, so you know it's gone over to accounting in case someone calls. Additionally, as I promised, on the transaction notes, we have the check number, check date, check amount in there just through the import process without you having to do all that data entry. So we give you documentation through the process, we speed up the process, we eliminate a lot of the data entry that goes on with the refund process, allowing you to focus on activities that bring money into the practice instead of sending money out of the practice. Tom?
Okay, Joe, thank you very much. So with that, the next product we're going to talk about is our Unapplied tool. And the Unapplied tool is a tool that has come about over basically 10 years of work with our clients and prospects. We found out over the years that we have received requests from many clients with regards to unapplieds and having to manage them. So we developed scripts in order to address them in many different ways and fashions. And we also learned that the reason for the growth of the unapplied balances in organizations is because, you know, there might be a situation where you take a copay at the front desk and the office visit encounter hasn't been created yet. So it gets put into the unapplied balance and then to be moved later, but that movement doesn't happen later. And then we found along the way, as well as we were dealing with these with our clients, that there was many different ways in the way that they wanted to handle the distribution of that unapplied balance. So the business rules varied from practice to practice, health center to health center, organization to organization. So we took all of those scripts that we wrote over the years and incorporated them into a program and put a user interface on top of it, so it enables you individually to control how you want to manage the unapplied balances within your organization, both at the encounter level and at the account level. So you can choose any combination of rules with the interface that we've created and be able to apply that to the unapplied balances and to enable you to move them around. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to talk you through and show you what the user interface looks like.
Similar to RefundManager, the Unapplied tool is also integrated with your NextGen database and is launchable out of NextGen Practice Management. So let's go in here and look at the Unapplied tool. What we have here is the user interface for selecting the rules. In a typical production environment, the Unapplied processing would run overnight while no one's on the system. But during the day, you can set up your rules and you can pick how you want to have the unapplieds handled. As Tom mentioned, the biggest issue we have is that different people get into unapplied situations for different reasons. And based on all those reasons, we have these rules up at the top that you can select how you want to take that unapplied money and move it down to the line items, or even move it up to the account and over to other encounters. Also, this is a great tool that works alongside RefundManager, because one of the questions we often get with RefundManager is, yeah, it's great to be able to refund line item credits. What do we do with unapplied credits? Well, that's where the Unapplied tool would fit into that equation too. So I'm not going to go into all these, but to give you an idea of the different rules that are available, in the upper left here, we have our encounter loop. So we're processing the encounter unapplied, and there's rules for if they're equal, if it's over, do you want to apply the whole amount and end up with a credit? Do you want to match? Do you want to do specific amounts? We had a couple clients who said, you know what, our problems are copays, but we have no way to really quantify it, and we didn't enter all the copays in the insurance setup, but we know the amounts. So we gave them a screen where they can put in all those different amounts. It'll create the transactions. They'll go through and prune out any ones they don't want, and it'll move that money for them within the encounters. And then when you get to the end of processing those encounters with Unapplieds, what do you want to do with the remaining amount? Well, you can turn off the checkboxes and leave it on the encounters, or you can go ahead and move it up to the account to have it processed later. On the right-hand side here, we have the account loop, which is we have money in account unapplied that we want to get down to encounters so we can do something with it. And again, we have similar rules on that side for moving it down from the account to the various encounters, how you want that to happen. You're able to subset this by locations and providers. This is especially useful if you're trying to do like a quick hit on a small group of unapplieds, or you're testing the tool and wanting to see what it does. There's some additional rules down here, like the insurances must be 0, or ignore transaction codes. Maybe these are your deposit transaction codes. If the unapplieds were created from those, you don't want to move those around. You want to park those for right now. Do you want to limit these service items that the unapplieds can be applied to? So do you want to prioritize them or just limit them to specific ones? And there's a screen that pops up where you can enter those. And then because the account unapplied processing can be the whole range of your database, we put some fields in here so that you can limit how much account work it's going to do, and you can specify like the first letters of the last names to be able to say like A through AZ, or A through C, those types of things, so that you're limiting what's happening. But once you set up your parameters, normally in production you'd hit save, and then those parameters would run that night. It would create batches with the descriptions that we see here, and then you'd review those and prune those the next morning. But while you're setting it up, we have the ability to run a test where it'll go out without actually creating the batches and find unapplieds and tell you in this left column here what rules it's going to use. So you can make sure you're going to get some results the next day without having to actually create the batches. Now, what does it look like when it does create the batches? Well, I'm going to go ahead, because we're in a test environment here, and actually run it instead of waiting overnight, in which case it's going to create all the transactions for us in NextGen tied to the batch, and then we can go into that batch in NextGen and take action on those. So here's our batches that were created, and here's all the work that was just done on your behalf just by clicking a couple buttons. So a great differentiator of this tool is the breadth of the rules that are available, the ability to refine the rules, and the fact that it continues to grow. We continue to run into clients with new and unique unapplied scenarios that we build this into the tool, and as part of the maintenance, everyone who's on maintenance gets the upgrades and gets these new capabilities. So it's a great tool on its own. It's great alongside RefundManager in that it can push those unapplieds down to line items where you can then refund it. And it can save you in your business office a lot of time. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Joe. So the next product we're going to talk about is our Billing Manager product, and that's the third of the 3 products that I mentioned on the financial side. And our Billing Manager product was really created for practices that need to create multiple encounters for a single patient visit. So we had a couple of clients come to us a couple of years ago and ask us to develop this for them. And we have, like Joe had mentioned earlier, we also add more functionality to it as time goes along as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to take you through a demonstration of this.
As Tom mentioned, Billing Manager is another tool that integrates mainly into the PM side of NextGen. So with Billing Manager, we're going to give you the ability to create several encounters from a single screen. Again, all these tools really focus around your productivity, making things faster, better, easier for you to do the work. The mantra that we live in this age with do more with less. So we create tools to help you exactly do that. Normally, when the patient comes in, they'd have a base encounter from their check-in, and that's kind of the starting point that we run into here. So we'll go ahead and pull up one of our encounters, and we'll see it's in here. Now, let's say in this case, we're set up for a ophthalmology scenario with a surgery center and A-scan and anesthesia that we're all going to be billing out from this one patient event. The patient shows up once, but we got to generate, in this case, 3 more encounters, so 4 total encounters. Now, it could be other specialties where there's still maybe anesthesia and surgery and specialty equipment that gets billed out, or maybe there's only 2 encounters that need to be created. The whole key here is we're giving you a way to build those encounters, build the charges onto them without having to dance around a lot of different screens in practice management. I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit so we can see everything here. So our base encounter, we decided in this configuration was going to be on the practice side. If we want to go ahead and create another encounter, we can right mouse and say add new encounter. We can also, if several of the encounters were created ahead of time, we can pair them up with this set of encounters and still add other additional encounters. But in this case, let's go ahead and say we're going to add a new ASC encounter. So it'll put the encounter out there. We'll see what happened here is the surgeon, in this case, is different from the provider. So it's smart enough in the configuration to go, the provider here becomes the referring here. And then we can pick a surgeon here. So we can do a search through our providers. We can set all of the appropriate fields that you'd normally set in NextGen for creating an encounter here. For the insurance, it can pull the last insurance within that practice that the encounter's on, or it can try to match the insurance of the base encounter. So we give you configuration options like that. And then we can go ahead and create the charges. So we can do a search in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick a sim here so we don't spend a lot of time on it. And build out the charge. It'll pull the amounts for you. You can put in any modifiers that need to be in here. It'll carry the diagnosis code down from the main encounter. You can add other diagnosis codes in here. Also, another great feature of this is it'll do anesthesia. So it'll do those calculations and pull that information from the database. So if we want to create an anesthesia encounter, we can do that too. Again, we're going to go ahead and set our provider here, and then we can add a new charge, and we can put in an anesthesia code. And just like in NextGen, we have the start time, stop time. It'll do the unit calculations. It'll do the rounding as you've set it up in NextGen, and it'll put that in there for you. Now, we've set this up, and right now, this is all in memory. So what we have here is we have the base encounter on top that we started with, and then we have 2 other encounters that it's getting ready to insert into NextGen for you. Okay, they don't have encounter numbers yet because they don't exist in NextGen. All this data is just kind of staged to go out into NextGen. So when you're done building everything, you simply go ahead and hit save, and it'll put you put those into NextGen for you, and then you can go ahead and create your next set of encounters. Now, just to complete the demo here, I'm going to pull this up, and here's the new encounters. And we can go ahead and pull these up within NextGen real quick here before we exit out. So this is in the surgery center practice encounter 30. So we'll flip over to that. So all of this, again, productivity just got created for us. Multiple encounters, multiple practices, charges. You can put in multiple charges all from a single screen from the billing manager. The billing manager is configurable so that we can set up different numbers of encounters that you like and the orders of the encounters and what their defaults are. As I mentioned, we have some set up for the insurance where if you want to match the base encounters insurance or you want to use the last insurance, what you want with the providers, the referring becomes the rendering, that type of thing when you create the new encounters in the other practices. So it is configurable. So this is not just for ophthalmology. This works in any situation where you need to create multiple encounters for a single patient visit. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Joe. So now that completes the 5 products that we said we cover in the webinar. So the first 2 products were our EHR related products, the ChartGuard and ChartGuard OnDemand. And the last 3 products were the financially related products, RefundManager, the UnnapliedTool, and the Billing Manager. All 5 products, as we've mentioned throughout the webinar, are to increase efficiency, increase effectiveness, and increase productivity within the practice, the health center, your organization. If you would like to see a more detailed demonstration of any of these 5 products, give me a call, send me an email to let me know, and we can take you through a more detailed demonstration of the product. This way it allows you to answer questions that you may have specifically to your organization. Just a little bit about us and who we are. We were founded in 2003. We have 20+ years of experience with NextGen. We have over 40 employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from health center to health center, practice to practice, working with the individuals to get as much out of your NextGen investment as possible. If you take the 2003 and the 20 years, they do not add up, and the reason for that is Itentive started out as the IT department for a medical organization. And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra back then was focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT group, and the leaders of the IT group said, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. So they agreed to do that, and from that point forward, we have worked with over 350 to 400 clients that use NextGen, and we've become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. Here's a little bit of our service lines. We have 5 service lines. Consulting, where we can do workflow enhancements, improvements, revenue cycle consulting. We have a group of developers that can customize templates, NextGen templates. We have the productivity tools that we talked about today. So we have a group of developers that work on those and support those. We have a group of technology folks that can provide IT managed services to your organization. And we also have our own data center, so we can host out of that data center as well. And then we can provide support. We can provide NextGen support and support to your IT group as well. We can provide any one of these solutions as a point solution or any combination of them as an integrated solution. As I mentioned, the next steps, contact myself or Joe if you would like to learn more about each one of these products, have a more detailed demonstration of them, and we can do that. If there are any questions at this point, we can answer any questions for you. I'll turn it back over to Chelsea.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe, for your demonstrations. If you have questions, now's a great time to ask. We only have 2, so we'll be happy to answer them all. You can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel, and we're just going to answer them in the order that we received them. First question. We are on the cloud. Can we still use ChartGuard?
This is Joe. I'll go ahead and jump in with that one. Absolutely. We have a number of clients that are hosted in the cloud with NextGen. In fact, it makes even more sense to use ChartGuard in that case, just because your data center is always going to be remote from you. And the most common outage we see is in the networking, because those wires are out there literally flapping in the breeze.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And it looks like we have another ChartGuard question. Must have been a popular one today. Do we have to have ChartGuard to have ChartGuard OnDemand?
The quick answer is you do not. They're separate products. They can be installed independent of each other, and they operate independent of each other. So if you only need one of the 2 solutions, then that's all you need to purchase. If you'd like both, they can both be set up to run together too.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Joe. And it looks like that's all the questions we have. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that you have a great rest of your week and enjoy your fall. See you at the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.